Jess and Jono, so great to share this space with you today. Thanks for coming and hanging out.
It's a pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a little while through just different friendship groups, our faith communities. So this is going to be fun. So fun. Jess, I've always just had this sense that you're the ultimate carer and, high EQ and just such an encourager. So I've always been fans of you. Jono, and you've been this figure in my head of the builder, surfer, spearfisherer. Actually, I remember years ago, so obviously you've represented in basketball, but I played 2 minutes of basketball with you once and never again. But we were just waiting for an event, so it was a friend's basketball court. And I remember just trying to defend you. And you're just goofing around, smiling. And you went up for this layup and I tried to defend you. And I got just a second of your power and I almost crumbled.
Oh no.
Yes, I think I went off and had a pretend phone call that I had to take. But yeah, I love that side of you. You've always been this kind of Thor figure in my head. So I'm looking forward to hearing another side of you today. But yeah, hey, tell us a little bit about your whānau. Where do you live and how do you spend your time?
Yeah, so we are, we live in Whatawhata, just on the way out, so just past Whatawhata on the way out to Raglan. We've got 3 beautiful children and living on a bit of a lifestyle block out there. We're pretty outdoorsy, so we have a pretty big garden and love spending our time with the kids, either in the garden or out spearfishing, fishing, surfing, playing basketball, anything outdoorsy really.
Nice. Wow. Kia ora. My name's Jess. I grew up most of my life in Raglan. I definitely would say that I'm a community kid through and through, probably because of that upbringing. So, what that kind of practically looked like is mum and dad and our whānau were kind of the first few that started the recycling centre out there. So I suppose from a young age, I've kind of always been a part of what the community's up to. Yeah. That's definitely been my upbringing, and I suppose I'm really wired for the people. I love my whānau, I love my extended whānau, and I love community. So we're definitely very outdoorsy, but I am, not as adventurous as this one. So I probably take on more of where you go for the adventure and the nature. I'm probably going for the person, the connection and the communication. As far as what I'm up to mahi-wise, I'm a counsellor, so work at Te Koau Health and love that. Yeah, awesome. That's me.
Work for you, bro?
Me, so I am a chippy, been a tradie pretty much my whole life. Started my apprenticeship from the day I left high school and have been more or less in the industry my entire career. I'm currently working at Sentinel Homes, operations manager there. Dabbled in other bits and pieces, but predominantly in the trade. The builder.
Great. How'd you meet? Tell us about that.
Well, I do quite enjoy telling the story. So, I grew up. I'm actually German. By my dad's side, I'm German. My mum's side, half German and Scottish and Irish. And we grew up in the Pacific Islands. So I spent most of my upbringing in the islands. And moved to Raglan to go to the Surf Academy when I was 15. And and that was where I met Jess. She was the head girl of Raglan Area School.
Oh, come on.
I moved over and had my only really serious relationship up to that stage was Pocahontas and when I obviously realized that she wasn't real, or she was real back in the day, and I met her and I thought, sheesh, that's Pocahontas right there. So it was a little bit of love at first sight for me, a little bit, I suppose. Like I said, moved over from the islands and We went to school together. So we were both I was a sports captain. She was the head girl. And, it took me a while to pluck up the courage to, I had a little bit of a stutter or a speech impediment back then. You couldn't just text to ask people out. You had to do it in person. So there was, no social media to Snapchat. Can we go out? So,
Totally.
I came up with a plan, and we were going to a leadership course, and I said to her on the flight over there that, hey, this is going to be hectic going to this thing because there's going to be so many young guys and girls, and it can be quite stressful. Just the whole, everyone's going to be, trying to get with everyone, and we should just simplify this so we can really practically focus in on the material that's going on, so we can learn, and we'll just pretend to go out. And and that'll just simplify it so we can focus on what we're doing because, we're both pretty attractive looking people and it could just get complicated otherwise. So that was the best I could come up with, really. And she was like, that's a great idea. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Got to hold her hand for the first time because as we went into the place, I was like,
because you're acting.
We were acting.
Yeah,
I was like, we're in. So
I actually do remember you going, we should probably hold hands.
Oh, yeah, just to make it believable.
And I was like, yeah, totally.
So anyway,
you weren't opposed to this pretend. Yeah, okay. Great.
So, I thought this is the best thing ever. I thought that would just translate into we'd get the hang of it and we would just come back and we'd be together, and didn't quite work out that way. It just didn't work out. We went back to our normal status and didn't have the courage to sort of carry it on after that. But, fast forward about a year.
Yeah,
a year or so. She invited me she was the head girl, obviously, so she invited me to a ball over in Whangamata because they were it was like our sister's school, and she texted me and she said, hey, they've invited us over, do you want to go? My heart stops. I'm like, she's asking me out to go to this ball. I'm in. This is like my dream come true. So I'm like, of course, like I'm coming, we're in. I'm like, we were good friends at that stage, but I hadn't quite got the courage to ask her out again. So anyways, the day rocks up, I'm all in my gear, ready to go. And she said, we'll meet at the library in Raglan, we'll drive over. And I get there and she wasn't there. It was this other girl at the library. And I was like, what the heck's going on? So she jumps in the car and she's like, oh yeah, Jess has already gone, but their car was full, so I'm going to ride with you. So I'm driving over to Whangamata with this girl. It wasn't Jess. I'm like, this is a bit weird, but I'm thinking, oh, well, it must have been, it must have just been like, I don't know. I was trying to doubt myself at this stage. It was a little bit, but anyways, we get to the accommodation. She wasn't there. She'd already gone. And I get to, in Whangamata, don't know anyone. I get to the ball and I don't have a ticket. I get to the thing, and there's like all the parents from the school, they're all outside. And I'm standing there, don't have a ticket, Jess has already gone in. And
I sound so good.
The girl I was with, she had gone in, she'd already had her ticket. So I'm like standing outside in the dark with all the parents going,
who's this creep? Jono.
Who's this creep out there? Sorry, this story is getting really long, but I'm committed now, so we're gonna see this through. Yes, I'm standing out there and I managed to find somebody to go inside and get the ticket off her. And she got the ticket. I get in and I walk in thinking that we're going together, and I walk in and she's dancing with this other guy. And I thought my world just crumbled.
Such a scandal.
Just crumbled. And
to be fair, on my side, Jono and I were really good friends, and so there was probably a real big friendship element to the relationship. So for me, I'm just clueless. I just think I'm inviting you to go with the crew. Like, you're the bro, come hang with the bros and we're good. And I'm going for another bro. I didn't really pick up on the non-existent.
Yeah, so I had the worst night of my life, sitting in the corner, just at this ball. Everyone's having a good time. I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, could not believe, tears running down my eyes. Just like, couldn't believe, like, the love of my life had someone else. And I had no idea. I thought we were going together. And so I sit there pretty much for the whole night. We went to there was an after party that I wasn't going to go to. I was just going to go back and go home, but someone managed to get there anyways. And halfway through the night, this must have been about midnight, I had enough. I was sitting there and I'm like, I got to say something about this. Like, this is, so I go up to her. She came over.
Checking on my friend. What a good friend.
I said to her, how on earth could you do that to me? How could you take me all the way this way and not tell me? Like, how could you do this to me? And she's just like, do what? And I was like, how could you? Like, I'm like heartbroken.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do you mean? And she's like, what are you even talking about? And I was like, I like you. And I always have liked you. And she had no idea.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what?
And so we ended up like, this was, I would say that quite calmly, but it was actually quite like I was like, how could you? I was like quite, you know what I mean? So it created like a bit of a circle at the party and everyone's just like, what's going on? We're like, anyway, so that was like just this magic spot in the air. And this poor other guy at this stage. Yeah, so anyways, that was like, she couldn't believe it. And it was just like this moment we realized that,
So cool.
I'm pretty sure we kissed on the dance floor at that point, yeah. and that was that, yeah.
I love it.
That's how we met. That's how I managed to...
To be fair, we've been pretty inseparable since, so we probably were like 16, 17 at the time. So we've been together a long time.
So how long have you been married now?
This year will be our 17th year married.
Far out.
Yeah. So
I
I
love that,
suppose
Jono.
like we kind of come as a pair, and we did probably from that point. Like my brother was over in the summer holidays from overseas, and I was listening to him describe us, and he, just mentioned, Jess and Jono like joined at the hip, inseparable. And it's kind of funny when you hear someone else describe you at that time and thinking, oh yeah, actually now I'm an adult and I can reflect back, yeah, we were pretty inseparable and kind of together from that point.
I love it. So that's been a long time, which is awesome. I love that. I didn't know that story, Jono. Tell me quickly, I'm curious about your similarities or your differences. How do you kind of keep in sync as a couple?
I think we're real similar in, I suppose, values, the way that we live, the way that we understand the world, but we are total opposites. Like,
Right.
we are really different in probably our interests, our hobbies. I'm extroverted, Jono's introverted.
Yeah.
Like even just on those kind of fundamentals, we're really different. Like I mentioned before, I'm kind of always going to go for the people, the community, the communication, that kind of a space. And Jono's probably always going to go for the nature, the experience, and that doesn't always have to have people, whereas I have to have people.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a beautiful difference, I suppose, that it works. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Well, statistically, it's that opposites do attract, and that's a like corny kind of a line, but it's true.
Yeah.
I know that for Kelly and I, my wife, we maybe knew it, but we're discovering it way more the longer we're in, that we are so different.
Yeah.
It's so different. Similar to you, I thought I was an extrovert. My younger self on the stage, groups, and, doing this. But as I age, and this is about how you refuel your energies and stuff, but man, I just want to, I need like quality time, if not alone time. Like where Kelly, if we go to like a weekend, she could do like 3 or 4 social events.
Yeah.
At one social event, she'll just lock in, I can do it. I enjoy it. I like people. But after a couple of hours, like I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, and I start doing the kind of the yawn, golf swing, pack the kids up. And I'll like literally like, hey babe, she'll go, what's the time? I'll be like, it's 11. She'll be like, what? So she just loves the people, and I'm like, yep, in small doses.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Totally. There's a song that we play often, and the words, Jono's like, this song is for me, and it's just over and over again, it just says, take me home. And this real cool, like, folk indie song, but it's just like, take me home. I don't want to be here. Take me home.
I get it.
And that's kind of like our jam, I suppose. Yeah. We're definitely that way wired. People energize me, and they, in some settings, drain you. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I often think about the idea that everyone's our teacher or could be our teacher. And I think that's true too of seasons, that seasons, if we let them, can also be our teachers. So I've known you, I guess, well enough to know that, there was a particular season for, especially you, Jono, but your whole family, that was impactful in a big way. So obviously I'm really curious around how that impacts you guys as a, in a relationship. However, the story on its own is immense. So I want Jono and Jess jump in when you want. Would you want to just kind of like set the scene for us about that period a few years ago and what life was like and where it led for you?
Yeah, totally. So obviously we got married. We had 3 beautiful kids, and when my building career was taken off, we had done my apprenticeship and gone through my time and started a design and build housing company, a building company. We're just going through the paces of establishing a young family, business, and very active, surfing and all the sports and that kind of thing. So from the outside, I suppose a lot of growth, a lot of activity, from the outside in looked like a pretty banging lifestyle.
Like
really,
we had it all together.
We had. I suppose fast forward a little bit, a couple of 2-3 years after starting our business, I suppose I was no stranger to being anxious. I suppose everyone goes through anxious periods of. I had a bit of a stutter when I was younger, so a bit of anxious moments around talking and that kind of thing. That sort of started changing around that time, and the gaps between that anxiety was shortening up, I suppose, and a lot more responsibility. I'm super driven to make the best business, and have the move on from property to property or whatever, and increase the business and all that kind of stuff, and all at the same time being dad and all that, that paralyzing, anxious feeling just started to linger, I suppose, and
did you have staff and a crew?
Yeah, we were growing, developing. I had dreams of all these things that we wanted to become, and they were all really great things, and they were all fantastic. It was all developing really fast, and we had it was going great. We had a big team, and it was all going great externally, and I think something to note is that I've got a bit of obviously a language for it now, but I suppose at this stage I don't really have a language for it. It's just this internal boiling that's sort of starting to take place, and I think a good way to describe it is just like I feel like a vice was just starting to cramp in on my chest and cramp in on my body, and it starts from the lung and the breathing and the chest. Just that worst feeling before you go. I don't know, some people speaking or whatever, that just doesn't want to go, and it's. It starts just eating away at myself. So that's sort of, I suppose, 2-3 years into starting the business, and manageable at this stage. We're sort of chugging along, managing it, but slowly but surely getting worse. And that sort of, suppose, eats away at your ability to do what you're doing well. Creates this nasty cycle of anxiety. You're worrying about the worst case scenario of everything, and starts wearing your body down pretty badly when you don't give it the space to heal itself, I suppose. So when you're a perfectionist and when you're driven and you start not being able to perform or think properly because of the anxiety, and things start not being as good as you want them to be, so the cycle, you just get worse and worse at being able to do what you want to do. But it just gets worse and worse because you just keep trying harder and harder, and that just digs you tighter into a hole. So, time keeps going on, it keeps getting worse. Don't know what it is, but it's starting to affect everything, really. Affect my ability to be patient. You get really snappy and on edge, just terrible feeling, I suppose, that starts absorbing you, that sickness starts spreading to your mind, I suppose, is probably the way to put it, I suppose. So, so again, from the outside, just pushing to there's no shortage of going to try and feel better, go surf trips and extracurricular stuff to try and make me feel better, but it wasn't obviously working, and so the drive just keeps going to push harder to fix it.
Actually, like I remember, again, obviously at the time we didn't have any language or any understanding of what was going on. I just remember thinking, oh, Jono's like quite low, which I hadn't experienced him before. And I remember like booking a weekend away and doing like a comedy show and this adventure trip and trying to kind of give space to, or in the very best way, meet the need of what was kind of presenting the best that we could. Like, I don't know, you seem like a bit upset. Like, let's just go have a laugh. Like, let's just kind of make it happy for a little while kind of thing.
Yeah, and so that sort of chest thing starts going to your body, and I remember just developing like the worst muscles, but like every part of your body is just spasming, and then the mind just turns into like the best thing you can sort of describe it as like a bicycle with the chains not on. It's just turning at 100 million miles an hour, but you can't engage with any thought process that's helpful. And so here I am running all this stuff, but with no ability to hold a thought for more than a tenth of a second, and so the only time when that would calm down was when I went home and put the kids to bed and I could start putting thoughts together. So I started, just working late at night every night because that's when I could think, because my brain wasn't working throughout the day. I was just with activity, I was all right, but as soon as I would try and engage with like writing an email or writing anything, I just couldn't grasp the thoughts to do that. So
how long was that period?
So this is
escalated.
It's probably about 2 years.
Oh wow!
About 2 years of time. About 2 years. And then somewhere along that, that journey of then just not being able to control my body's spasming badly, and your brain's spasming, so you can't keep a hold of thoughts. You develop this hate, I suppose, hate for yourself, hate for the fact that you've got the most beautiful things in the world, beautiful family, beautiful kids, but you just feel broken. You know what I mean? So that thing that comes into your mind of that, how because I'm driven and want to achieve things, but I can't do it because I can't think properly. Your hate for yourself just grows, and you start developing this second voice in your head. I suppose that's feeding all this stuff, and you don't know where it comes from. You don't know no one's telling you this, but it just starts to become louder. That period of time would look like me rocking up to work, not much sleep, Monday to Friday, giving my best I can, just stay alive, just to stay keeping the wheels turning, just too afraid to tell anyone, talk to anyone, didn't want everything to fall over, I had all this stuff going on, I just couldn't let it go. That voice, that dark voice, just starts getting louder and louder, and that becomes a real voice that's no longer just a thought back in the back of the head. It's something that's staring you in the mirror every day. And that voice just becomes louder and louder and louder. So, at that stage, 2 years on, it would look like, I'd go to work, be okay, come home, put the kids to bed, try and go to bed, and can't sleep. Just that thoughts and mind just going over 1,000,000 miles an hour and hating it so much, and then the dark voice coming in and just not being able to control that thought. And so sometimes it would be 11 o'clock at night, I would just jump out of bed, jump out of the door, and I would just spend the whole night running through town, running through the city, getting chased by things that weren't even there, just hating myself, looking in the mirror and hating it, hating the voice that was in there giving me negative thoughts all the time. Sometimes it would just be curled up in a ball in the bathroom, just continually punching my face because I just hated myself for not being able to do anything. And so that just grows and grows and grows. And
like hearing it's incredible. Like just, hearing it again, I'm reminded how long we did just handle it. Like, I don't know where that exactly is from, whether that's part of our culture, probably part of the upbringing. I'm like the eldest in my family, but we just kind of were good at just keeping going and so strong. Like, I think, you know, just the ability to just day after day be like, this is actually horrendous. But when you're in it, you don't realize. And the default for us, particularly in our relationship and probably us as individuals, is we have a big capacity. So we just kept going and going and going and kept being like, it'll be all right. We just need to be strong. Like, it's going to be all right. We just are going to grind through this. And then it kind of got like when what Jono's describing, that's when it was like, we can't just be strong through this. Like, we're not going to be able to do this alone. This is really different. Like, it's not like just a low mood, or, you know, you're not that happy today, or you need some encouragement, or you just need to be seen and heard, or whatever that you normally do for each other in relationship. It was like, oh, like this is going to change our world.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just something then that I just remember at that stage, anyone who was trying to reach out, not that not many people knew, but I just couldn't handle anyone trying to talk to me or engage with me because you're just so scared of anyone knowing. Failing. I remember, just anywhere I was like driving with the kids in the car and fighting. This is getting to the later stages, but, you know, driving up to Raglan and just every telephone pole, every tree, you're just like fighting to keep the car straight. And then you're looking in the rear mirror at your kids, and that battle of I've got the most beautiful, and how can I be in here fighting that feeling at this time? This is just not right. It's wrong. It's something. Yeah, it's unbearable. Absolutely unbearable.
Jono, did Jess know the depths of what you were going through at this point?
Oh yeah.
I feel like I didn't really at this point, not like in the way that you're articulating it now, being able to connect in that way with what was really going on, because you had no language. There was no articulation of what the internal world looked like. And I think I only really started to go, oh, this isn't right, when it was kind of, you know, you would just like get up and run like all night, and you're like, like what I do here, that's really not you, or that kind of things. And when that started to happen, that's probably when I was like really kind of said to him one day, we just can't keep going, like that we can't keep the business up, you can't keep going. And so that was definitely a moment in time, but I don't think it was until later that I really understood the depth of what he was feeling, how hard it was for him to even stay here, to even stay living, that I had no idea that he was really struggling in that way.
So what point did it evolve? Did you get help, or did it break before you got help?
Yes, I think one of the moments that I think was the sort of last straw was just a day at work, and I just completely couldn't take it anymore, and just blew up and ran around the office, smashing things up, smashing into things, and I just remember vividly just screaming like on the top of my lungs, just like I had enough, like I just hated it. I just wanted out. It was enough, and I that feeling when, people are like, can't understand why people would commit suicide. At that moment, you're like, you've got no control. You've just got zero ability to balance out that voice that's in your head. There's just nothing can do that. Like there's like that dark voice overruns that other voice in your head saying, hey, everything's fine, and that other voice just outdrowns it, and there's nothing, your power to fight that just gets weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker, even though it doesn't make sense at all. Your brain is just actually fried. Your brain has got no ability to hold on to those things anymore.
Was Jess with you on that day?
I think you were.
Yeah. I mean, like, that was quite, again, I suppose you look back and with all this, where we are now, I was like, I could answer that and be like, yeah, I'll do this, this, and this. But I actually just sat there like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, I can't even comprehend, which is funny because if you put me in another situation with someone else, I would probably click into gear, know what to say, know the pathway, know what to do. But when it's so close to home and it's the love of your life who you're so used to not being like that, it's just like, you don't know, you have no words. I just remember sitting there, but I knew that I had to say, like, enough's enough. Like, you actually can't keep going like this. And it wasn't because he was chucking stuff around. It was just like him inside, hearing him, I can't keep doing this. It's like, you can't keep doing this. Like, we're going to have to change. And
so there was a few incidences like that in a row. One night in particular, instead of running from these voices, I got in the car and I was driving away from them, just trying to escape them. And I spent a few hours just screaming in the car and knew I'd really lost it when I was looking in the mirror and my face wasn't even there anymore. The darkness was what I was seeing in my face was like literally took on the resemblance of the darkness and the anger and the death that I was looking at. Enough was enough. And Jess was like, I'm like, I can't stop the business. I can't, like, and she's just like, don't worry, I'm going to go and I'll go and get a job. You just need to go and get looked at and figure out what's going on. So I didn't know where to go. I had no idea. I didn't even know what the word was, what I was experiencing, other than going crazy pretty much. So I went to the GP and explained everything that was going on, very diluted, because I didn't want him to know everything that was going on, and sort of said that I'm just feeling a bit, this and that, and sort of said enough. And he was like, man, there's a doctor, luckily, that we've been using a long time, and he knew us pretty well, and he's like, I need you to stop working for a foreseeable future, and I need you to go see a psychiatrist, and you need to get looked at.
What was that like for you, hearing someone else saying, I imagine the responsibility that you have for the staff and your family is one thing. Was there any sense of like validation and someone saying, you can stop, you need to stop?
I think there was a bit of both. I think there was a little bit, knowing that what was going on wasn't, my character or that there was something else going on that I couldn't control, and having a language for it was definitely, it was the most frightening thing ever. The only thing I'd ever heard about mental health was crazy, and I was just like, man, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That's not me. I'm not depressed. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, even though hearing it, he's like, man. So I went and booked him with a psychiatrist, and had a session with this lady, and really got the ins and outs of what was chemically going on in my head, and that was just like the most eye-opening. I was just like, man, I had no idea what even any of that stuff was. So the diagnosis was extreme levels of anxiety and depression, and with high what do you call it, levels of suicidal ideology and all this kind of stuff, so I just went home and managed to. She said you need 3 months. You need 3 months to start with, so anywhere between 3 months and as long as it'll take, but minimum you're going to stop for 3 months, and you're going to do some psychology, and that's why our recommendation is 12 psychology sessions and 3 months minimum to you to start regathering control of your brain again. I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, what on earth do I do now? Like, it in my world at the time, like 3 months, looking back is like nothing, but at the time it was like 3 months.
Lifetime.
No way. There's no way I'm taking 3 months off. Came home and just, like you said, just it was almost like a bit of a relief, I suppose, of knowing what we got to do. You know what I mean? So.
Did you eventually close the business?
Yeah, so
it all happened pretty fast from there, like, prescribed medication, diagnosis, and then this thing of like you have to stop work. It was like within that entire week. It was, and even that, I don't even know how you managed to do that. Like, I wasn't a part of those conversations. Jono did all of that. Like, feeling that way, went around to all of our employees and, share with them that we were closing down business. That all happened so fast.
Yeah, I knew the seriousness of it, and I knew that doing this half pie wasn't gonna fix it. And I thought, man, those feelings towards my family and my kids, I want to have that. I want to be back. I want to feel those emotions that I had at the start, and which I'd lost. I just couldn't do it, and that trumped everything else, fortunately. So yeah, shut everything down. I was just like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, and I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna understand why on earth this happened and why and what, and I don't want it ever to happen again. If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it properly, and shut it down. Didn't basically shut everything down. Just got a job like within 3 or 4 days somewhere else, and it started my journey of healing and understanding. And
I think there was like some grief and like massive grief in that. I suppose up until that point, we were a young family. We owned a home. We had a business. I think we were both kind of go-getters in that sense. So our focus was there. Like, that's living, that's success, and we're doing that. And I remember feeling like, wow, like our whole life has changed in the blink of an eye in like 1 week. What it means to be us, what it means to be a family, where we thought we were heading has all changed. And just in the space of 1 week, how quickly your world can just be unpacked and put away into a nice little kind of package, and then you are now in this new thing that you're doing. And I remember that being quite a strange feeling and kind of like, gutted. Like, that sucks. Yeah.
I'd love to get, touch on in a minute a little part of the healing. We might not get to the whole story today, but first, thank you for sharing that. That's an immense part of your journey, so I want to just acknowledge that. Thank you. Jess, we hear of, as you said, the love of your life, the pain he was going through. So how was that as a partner? How was that season and then into the season of seeing him begin taking small steps of healing? Yeah.
I think kind of how was that season can be summed up in, I remember after the diagnosis and after our business had shut down, and once we had it kind of felt like we were a bit numb. And us as a whānau, our thing is always the ocean. Like, if we go away for a long period of time, we go back to the ocean. That's our first thing. And so we were kind of like, oh, what should we do today? Let's just all go to the beach. And like, if you know Jono, the way he engages with the ocean, it's like part of him, he's alive. There's life in his eyes. That's how we all roll.
This man spears fish like meters and meters under the water. Yes, I get it.
It's a part of who we are. And I remember sitting there, and Jono was like, had shoes on with laces and like was just sitting on the beach, and the kids were all running off and playing and having fun and just doing their thing. And I remember just looking at him, and he didn't have life in his eyes. Like, he just wasn't there. And that for me was probably the first time that I felt really afraid, because I think, we have been in each other's world so long, and I get to be me because of who Jono is. So I think I was really afraid because he is really, I don't know, there, strong part of my world. And all of a sudden it was like he wasn't there. It was like a massive grief of just like, and fear of, is he ever going to come back? Like, am I ever going to have Jono back? Am I ever going to, like, is he ever going to smile again? Like, is this like the change of our world forever? That's what that felt like for me. And I do remember feeling really afraid, like, and I suppose then, you know, the experience on the relationship, I mean, again, it's the love of my life, the person who I've spent most of my life with, who I would do anything for. But I suppose as the journey got on, like at the start, I think I was a little bit like, we've got a diagnosis, this is the mission, like we're just going to go and we'll smash that. I think that was both of our things. We're just real, like, we're just going to make the best of whatever, be positive, be strong, keep going. And that was our disposition. But it didn't feel like that. Like in the beginning, it felt like I'll protect Jono, make sure that he's all good. And then eventually that got really hard because actually I was probably the person who got most of the things, the negative things that were part of being unwell. I, you know, had to be a wife and loving and a mum and keep working. And also I'm not someone who'd really ever let people into my world before. Like I'm quite independent. I'm the oldest of like brothers, you know, and so I kind of am wired for that, but that became really hard for me and really isolating. And I think that I realized, I think I felt grief again and disappointment that love was so fickle in some ways. Like I love this person, yet eventually in their darkest moments, love just becomes my needs aren't being met and I actually find it really hard to love you. And that was real surprising for me. Like I hadn't felt that before in marriage. I hadn't felt that before in relationship where I didn't have like this never-ending, like overflowing love. It was like all of a sudden I'm getting resentful, I'm feeling frustrated, bitter. I'm finding it really hard to love.
Of course.
Yeah, and that was hard. Yeah.
Can we stay on that for a moment? You know, I'm curious for others that might have a partner that is going through a season at whatever level of inner turmoil or a depression. What would you tell them? What would you tell them as a partner watching, you know, your loved one go through that? Is there any advice or anything you could encourage them with or look to?
Yeah, I think if I'm being really honest about like that season and that particular time, like there's heaps that I could give now, but that to someone who's in that actual moment of the grind, the dark, and you actually don't have anything, is that you probably aren't going to be able to find that alone. Like this is the part where you need to, or for me anyways, letting other people in was the thing that kept hope alive, because there was none. Like in the relationship, there wasn't any. Our whole practical worlds had changed and fallen apart. Like hope is really hard to find, and joy is like non-existent.
Yeah.
So even just hope, I think it would be to let people in, to find a person or be really brave enough to be vulnerable, to be open with a couple of people and don't hold it all, I suppose.
Yeah. Sounds wise.
So wise, but that's not what I did at the time, you know?
No, sure, but
I think it's so wise. Like I do remember a moment where that changed for me was going out to see a couple of my best friends who I've known since I was like 7 and 13. And I just remember like sobbing, and us all sobbing, because it was the first time that I'd said, this is how bad it really is. Like, this is my world. Here it is. And I think before that, I don't know, it was that whole practice wasn't something that I did.
Interesting.
Like, you know, it's not that you're presenting a face, you tend to keep your stuff to yourself.
Absolutely, and you're protecting
your,
Jono's story. And there's this quote that has stuck with me for a long time. And as you speak, I'm reminded, it says, "There's no agony quite like a story untold."
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the traps of not being vulnerable in our friendships or communities. And Jono, in hindsight, can you think of any relationships or rhythms that were key for you in your healing process?
And that healing process was so eye-opening, and I mean, for me, there was definitely, looking back, there was so many, and I think the first one for me was medication. Like that, getting on medication was like, I remember like 2 weeks afterwards, just been like, for the first time, I was like, I could get a thought and I could hold on to that thought. Wow. It was like everything in my brain slowed down, and I was like, this like going on turned to like and then slowly I could start. And without that, I don't know where or how I would have been able to start. I suppose that journey, I suppose, of figuring out what was going on. So that was massive. That was key for me. That side. I mean, there's a lot of people in our world at that time who were like pretty against that, but for me, that was, I don't know how I would have done it without, I think. That was probably number one. Number two is and I think this is I went through a couple of therapists to sort of start with, and some of them didn't click, some of them didn't work, and I think that was really key, is that you first, you got to find someone that works and does, goes about things and unpacks it in a way that suits you. I had a couple that I went into, and it just was going nowhere, and I was just like, I gotta get out of this. This isn't. Got in touch with a psychologist who just unpacked it for me like I could not have related any better to.
So you need some really good synergy with the person on here.
Synergy, and there's lots of different ways of unpacking what's going on. There's a lot of different types of counseling, psychology, there's a lot of different avenues, approaches that practitioners use, I suppose, and finding one that works and identifies with yourself to understand it, because there's a lot of ways, quite practical, and I needed imagery, I needed things to help me understand in a practical way what was going on. And so I met the psychologist through our GP and started seeing him, and one thing that stuck with me the most was this analogy of a tree, and what we did was, I think my first session for an hour, I just wrote down every thought that came into my mind on a piece of paper, and it was kind of like the imagery of a branch of a tree and the leaves, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of leaves on a tree, which is your thoughts. And he was like, we need to come down to the root of the tree to figure out what belief system is causing you to think all these things. So like the first session, for an hour, we just sat there in silence, and I wrote down everything that popped into my mind. Everything was, what if, all your classic high anxiety type things. And he's like, how does it feel like looking at this on a piece of paper on a wall? It was just like a wall full of thoughts, and we worked our way down into the root, the very core beliefs that were shaping the way I was viewing the world, viewing everything and anything, right down to the very, very core of it. And then, eventually those things were just right in your face of what was actually causing me to be so anxious about so many things. Like what fundamental thing is going on? And he really brought it, didn't faff around the edges too much on how I was feeling about anything, really. Like, in fact, quite often I was like, do you want to know how I'm feeling? It was nothing. It was just like, we're going to figure out what's making you be so anxious. And we got into a deep place of understanding, just basic things that, happened when I was a kid, or just basic things about my environment when I was a kid that shaped the way I seen the world and the way I viewed the world, and that put on steroids in an environment that I was in just exploded that, you know what I mean? So that was absolutely key. And so that guy was a lifesaver for me. And so I had this period of time that was seeing him once a week. Yeah, so that relationship and those 10 whatever sessions they were with that guy over the 3 or 4 months, that was huge. I'd learned more about myself than I could ever ask for in that space of time. He really unpacked and made quite simple what was going on in my thought process, and a lot of activities, mindfulness activities, and just training to get my control of my thought processes back. I'd have, homework from him that I'd have to do every week. And some days I smashed it and some days I was absolutely terrible. Some days I just literally slept all day. It's a slight different feeling being on medication. Everything's slowed down and all your senses are a little bit dulled, and that's, so you kind of get to the point where you're like, man, you're so grateful for that slowing down, but eventually you want those senses back, I suppose, you know what I mean? And so there was that whole aspect of slowing down, getting the medication, getting some professional help, someone who actually knew their stuff, knew what they were talking about. He really knew his stuff. And then the other quite ironic thing, and not ironic, but I remember before all this happened, I remember driving by a cafe with Jess, and I remember just taking the piss out of these two guys sitting at this cafe, just like, and I think we were having a date, and there was two guys there, and I was like, what a bunch of dweebs. Like, I could never just go to a cafe with another guy and talk about your feelings. Like, that's just the most stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I remember like carrying the conversation on to the point of like, Jess was like, what are you doing? Like, shut up. Like, I remember just vividly remember bagging these two guys. Anyways.
It's funny, you always bag what you want. Oh, man. You don't know it at the time. I'm not talking about you, but just in general. It's funny how you can be like, oh, that's so dumb, but actually it's probably because secretly you're like, I wish I could do that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know, after maybe a month or so of being off work and stuff, I get a text from a guy that I play basketball with, and he's just like, dude, I'm having a coffee. You want to come have a coffee with me? And I remember just being like, I don't know, man. Like,
you're betraying yourself there a bit, Jono.
And so I ended up going, and this guy was like, I knew he knew something was going on. I knew he knew. And I was expecting him to be like, are you okay? Because like anyone who was texting me saying, are you okay? I was just like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, whatever, like very, and he just didn't talk about it. He was just like, how's the Lakers? We were just talking about basketball. And I got to the end of it, I'm like, man, this guy didn't even ask me anything about what's going on. And then next week he texted me, hey, you want to get coffee? And it became a weekly thing. And I just, ended up loving the guy. Hey, he was just like one of those. This guy gets me every time. So we catch up weekly, and eventually he was just like, how's your head today, man? Like, how are you?
Wow.
How are you feeling today? And just so simple. It wasn't. It wasn't much. It wasn't. He had no agenda, no nothing. He just wanted to be there for me. He just wanted to, touch base once a week.
They talk about, Jono, the ministry of presence, and holding space for people.
To actually see someone and care for them is such a gift. When you're in that moment, and there were definitely a couple of people who did that with consistency and so much aroha, that it's not like they unpacked it for you and they just never left. They always were there, and those people are absolutely the thing that carries hope and is a massive part of healing and wholeness. And I remember feeling quite relieved when this was happening. I'm like, was a weight off my shoulders in the sense that I didn't have to be everything in this space. And that's what I kind of mean of like being vulnerable and actually open and allow yourself to be someone who's in community and in relationship with other people. We're just not made to do everything. you know, and to actually have the experience of that and feel that was life for us.
Yes, I think every week for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, we would catch up, and I learnt 2 things. One was I learned that I learned how to talk. I learned how to share how I was feeling. It didn't need to be perfect. Didn't need to be anything. I just learned how to communicate and say how I felt. And the conversations got deeper and deeper every time, but it wasn't really from his doing. It was just all of a sudden I was talking about the psychology session I had, and just got deeper and deeper, and yeah, that kept going on. We still have coffees, not every week, but we still to this day.
So you're that guy now when those guys are driving past in the ute going, what are they doing? You're that guy. I love it.
Yeah. And I think one more rhythm that sort of came out of that time was finding I mean, I was always into all my sports and that kind of stuff, and that was great, but it didn't have a specific mental relaxation or mental activity. And in that time, when I was a kid, I spent my days freediving and spearfishing and that kind of stuff. And in that time, in that space and time I had, I thought, what the heck, I might give it a go here, and started getting into it. And it was like as soon as I would get into the water, it was just like having an activity that would last 7-8 hours, and I could only focus on one thing. All the noise of the world, all my thoughts would just slow down, stop. I was just focused on one thing in a beautiful surrounding, in a beautiful setting. Was that rhythm of therapy. And I don't know how many hours I spent underwater those months, but my gosh, that was a therapy like no other. And, you know, the activity doesn't necessarily have to be something like that, but that particularly for me was something that was outright mandatory therapy. Like, I got on the water, I couldn't worry about anything. I couldn't think about, besides getting eaten by a shark or something like that, which was very real, but also very manageable. But I was reminded in those days of what made me tick as a person, and what made me come alive, and what connected me to who I was, why I was here, what I was about, and managed to, in that time, reprioritize my belief system in the world and in everything, and yeah, it was just incredibly educational and yeah, unreal, really. I mean, as far as rhythms were concerned, some days, you know, I had all these activities, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, all this stuff. Some days I would smash it. Some days it was so hard. Some days, I remember so many days, just would come home from work and I literally hadn't got out of bed yet. And I was just like, I feel like absolute crap because I'm sorry, babe, but I haven't done what I need to do today. And you know, she was always, I'm always thinking, oh man. But time and space grew into, I didn't go back to the building industry for over 2 years. That's how long it took. It didn't take 3 months. That 3 months was bare minimum. And that whole journey, I mean, imagine our finances just, it got to the point where we didn't really even care anymore. We're just like, hey, what's another 50,000 out the window?
Money?
Who needs money? We're going to do this. We're going to do this right. But yeah, those are probably the rhythms
I think
that I established that got to, yeah, it was connection with people. It was connection with understanding from someone who actually knows what he's talking about, and connecting to an activity or nature into something that really makes you focus on the here and now in the present.
Awesome. You touched on it, I think, already. I'm curious for you both as a couple or even as a family in such a horrendous season. It's almost like a counterintuitive kind of question to throw out, but how would you say the season was a teacher to you, or even how was it a gift for your relationship?
It's such a funny thing to hear you say how was it a gift, because in a lot of ways it was the biggest gift. I don't think we would be who we are, where we are. I suppose if I look at our family now, peace and joy is what exists in our home. And I think that if I'm being really honest, pre-Jono becoming unwell, we were perhaps driven for a goal or a purpose that wasn't really even aligned with who we were as people.
Fascinating.
Do you know what I mean? So I think even though it was the worst and most awful experience of our entire lives, it was the thing that's really taught us about who we are. It's opened us up to being vulnerable. It's taught us about healing. It's brought true joy into our lives. It's hard to even, it doesn't really make sense, but it does in that, because I suppose, you kind of just go through life not really aware of what's really going on in your internal world or who you really are until it gets really hard. And actually not having anything, not having all the success and money and things we were driving for was a really beautiful thing for us, because now we know what matters to us. Now we actually know what peace sounds like and looks like in our home and what joy is. And that people are really important in our world, I suppose. So community and being in accountability. Faith is really important to us. Those are kind of the things that guide us now, whereas before it would have been what's the next mission? What are we going to achieve? Now it's how are we going to be us? How are we going to be us no matter what we do? So everything feels like living. Even doing this, it feels like living, being open and real about our worlds and what that looks like, to me feels very freeing. And I would never have been able to do that beforehand. I feel like in our marriage, even though I nearly watched my husband die in the sense before my eyes, and I didn't know if he would come back, the level of intimacy, the connection, even things like Jono being able to learn how to communicate by going for a coffee, I get all that now. I'm so glad that I didn't just leave when it got really hard, when I didn't leave when I felt like love wasn't giving me anything. I'm so glad that I was so wired for my kids and for my family, and that even in the hard times, I think I was wired for a story that's bigger than my own. And I'm so glad that I allowed people in and was vulnerable, because I didn't think Jono could be any cooler than he is. I really loved him before he was unwell. But now I have this person who actually engages with how I feel, and we can talk, and I feel heard and listened in such an intimate way.
And has coffees with,
other
males.
I know. But the level of that connection for me and that intimacy, that's what we're going to grow old on, that kind of thing. That's, to me, living, to be, and I just don't think we would have got that depth had we not gone through that. And Jono's so kind and so gentle and so soft-hearted, and so he knows who he is now. And in turn, I get to know who I am, and, so many gifts.
How about you, Jono? When I think about, it's almost cruel me asking you to try and condense teaching moments into one thing, but could you summarize, I don't know, just one gift that season was when it comes to your relationship?
Oh man, there's a lot, so much. It was definitely a life-shaping experience for sure. I can't even begin to explain the different person I am from the experience, to be honest. Just being able to be calm, be patient, be understanding and loving, and communicate, like Jess said. And in our relationship, like she said, is the beneficiary of all that is that it then becomes something that you can transpires into this relationship. And for me, just perspective, I'm always an absolute judgmental prick beforehand. I'm going to be completely honest, and just no idea what people go through. And so perspective, in perspective and what goes on internally for people.
Yeah.
And understanding perspective on the world goes a long way. Yeah. But man, the strength that it's put into, like, I can't even find words to express the gratefulness to have someone with you. Sorry. You know, when you look back at the scenarios and you go, man, if I had someone else, or if I was by myself, or if I was, you know, that the gratitude for sorry, definitely grows the love tank of, you know, it's not very often we sit down and think about those days, but when you get to, you know, think about it and be grateful for the people that coax you through, you know, obviously just being a massive part of that. And, you know, she, a lot of times, I think most people would have left, had enough. So I'm grateful for she didn't, but then I'm also grateful that she put the brakes on and said enough's enough. So there's a beautiful balance there of gratefulness on both sides of being tolerant, but also not too tolerant, and saying, hey, you gotta sort this out. And what it does for our relationship, I would never want to lose that memory, or that, not the memory, but I'd never want to, that builds, those calluses build a beautiful connection. And it's worth pushing through that stuff. And it's worth it. It's worth being stronger at the other side, for sure.
Well, I'm grateful for your willingness to have this conversation and share that. And I imagine there'll be others that are grateful for that too. So thank you. Let's try, I don't know how, let's try and pivot to kind of wind our conversation up. You two have got two amazing teenagers, one preteen. You've obviously, that season we've spoken about is behind you now, and but you're in a new stage as a couple, a new season where, you know, so often our kids dictate our relationships, you know, or at least our rhythms and our time, and you're probably not out of that yet, but you're in a new stage. What's one thing you're looking forward to about being in a new stage, having older kids?
I think for me, I suppose there's like a couple of things that I look forward to. For us, I look forward to like the joy, the travel, the excitement, in the sense of like, you know, your time is not always necessarily needed the 24/7 when you have younger kids. So to rediscover or find new things together in that season is really exciting. And then, like, I'm going to be honest, I can't wait to be a grandma, like, in that sense. I mean, you know,
sure.
I kind of see the things that I look forward to or I'm excited for is like our time. Like, we've sat down with the kids and been like, hey, how many years can you all not have kids for this many years and give us like that time?
Yeah.
But I love getting older and I love growing old, and getting old has been such a gift for me. Like, I think the young me just had no clue, but actually the gift of age and all of those things to come to me are like probably the things I look most forward to.
That is,
I can't wait till our little muckles are running around, and you know that. Yeah, I'm like pumped for all the exciting adventures. I always tell Jono, like, I can't wait till you take me to Spain and we can dance in the streets, and like, you know, us having those moments and those memories. But I also deeply look forward to having that next season of age. Age is a gift.
Yeah, I think for me, like, if anything, this season's taught me is obviously a big part of it mentally is living in the now and being present in your mindset, but also being present in your season. And for me, a big part of this is like, man, being a dad and a husband is a big part of your life. And for me, you know, the old me would have been like, I've got all these, I'm very active with like a bit of an environmentalist and all that. I want to go pick up all the rubbish in the whole world. You know what I mean? I've got all these ambitions, but the biggest thing for me is just like, man, I just want to. At the moment, my biggest thing is I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and that stuff can wait. You know, that stuff's chump change later on. You know, like this is the most beautiful time, and I think if you know, not that I would have it back, but one of the most beautiful lessons I've learned is like, man, I need to enjoy every car ride to drop them off at school. Sorry, guys. It's really going downhill. Look.
Don't be sorry. This is good.
And
the kids are going to love this. They write him birthday cards to see who can make him cry the most. So good. But actually, this was never a thing. This now is Jono never cried. Like, I never saw Jono cry until now. Like, this is the gift, right?
Well, how about, I'll finish on one question. And you'll have to like just humor me for a moment. I want you to try your best to think 30 years from now. I don't know, picture you've just hosted Christmas with all your mokos, all your grandkids. No pressure on your kids. Yeah. Let's just a scenario. Maybe you've just danced in the kitchen. Your adult kids are down by the fire pit, just past the glass house and the horticulture and the orchard that Jono's put in because, let's be honest, it'll happen. They're by the fire pit and you two walk down at the end of the night just to join them. And you overhear your kids telling their kids about your relationship. What's one thing each you'd hope that they would describe about the relationship?
Oh man, I couldn't do one thing, man, but I'll keep it short if you don't mind. I would hope that they would be like, man, Granddad, above anything, he was kind, patient, calm, loving, and that was his character. He wasn't angry or anything like that. Just a loving, kind guy, and that he loved Jess. They would make out in the pantry sometimes. Maybe some natural gardening. They're a bit quirky, but man, they love each other so much, and you know, our family's heritage is based on that love. You know what I mean? That's come through, and that he loves his creator and the creation, and loves his family, and that would probably be.
Wow.
Jingo's cue the tears with these last final. For me, I think what I'd love to hear is that Jingo's, can I even say this without having a wah? I would love my moko to be able to articulate that their nan's love and her marriage included them, that she was a woman who thought about them in her marriage, that her space, her ability to love and care included them in the picture, because I think that's how I want to live. And I suppose in a faith sense, the creator is that to me, and I am just part of a beautiful story. And so for my grandkids to be like, man, their marriage was like so loving and so full of joy and peace, but they actually held us in that space. Like we were cared for and we mattered in their marriage. Oh. They lived for us in their marriage. Like if my moko could articulate that, obviously I want my kids to, but like that's something that I want to leave for all of our generations that come from us, is that they deeply matter. Yeah.
Thank you. We're gonna finish our time with some couples cards.
Couples cards.
You haven't seen these cards,
no.
These questions, so here's how it's gonna go. If quick fire, or the best you can, one of you can pick a card up and the other one answer, and we'll just see where it goes.
Oh, goody.
Who's going to start?
I'll go. Let me go.
We'll see the competition come out.
Yeah, we're both very competitive. Okay. Such a dumb one.
Come on.
Do your best impression of me.
Oh, man.
What's something she'd say?
Man. Man, honestly, my thing that she had when she was like 15 in high school, when she was pissed off, and she just had this look of like wanting to, that look of you've really stuffed up, and I'm not interested, but I'm interested, and it would kind of look like
Go.
there it is, and that would just break me. I don't know. When she had that look going on, I'm like, I'm broken. Yeah, she had me wrapped around her finger. That's for sure.
Well done.
I can't do it though.
You did well.
Can you do it just so we can get a?
I actually can't, but you know who can? Our middle girl.
She's got
I
Interesting.
see that and I'm like, oh wow, that's what that looks like, and that's what that feels like.
Go. You're up, Jono.
Oh. All right. If I lost all my memory, what would be the first thing you would share with me about us? Oh man.
Oh, there are so many things that I wouldn't say on this. Oh man. You know, I'm just going to be true to me. I'm such a sentimental kind of heart person. I think I'd probably share with you the memory of bringing our eldest son home and what you were like. You know, you were just so careful with him. And I'm like raised in a Māori family, like, you know, you pass the kid around, everyone holds the kid. And I just remember you being like, oh no, like you can't, no, he can't be out. Like he's fine, he's sleeping. Like you just wouldn't hand him over. He was so precious to you. So I think that memory's always stuck with me, and that's something I'd share with you.
Awesome.
You're a great dad.
You're up. There's a couple more.
Oh, we get to do all of them. What does my aroha or my love feel like?
Oh.
Ooh.
Man.
This is a G-rated show.
G-rated show. I was like, well, I've got this term that I use all the time. And it is something that is, I call it the Jessness. And Jess will ask me quite often these types of questions, and I will just say, it's just the Jessness. Your love is like something only that you have and possess, and no one in the world carries it quite as specially as she does. And to me, I just say I can't describe it. It's just the Jessness.
That is so cool.
I love it.
That is so, but you get that, right? What he's saying. I love that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. Last one.
Go.
Where is an area I have sacrificed for us that you could acknowledge more? Ooh.
We actually talk about this, I suppose, with seasons changing and being like, we are very different people, and I suppose what this season has also given us is we are secure in who we are as individuals. We are together, but we're like, when these kids are out of home, we've got to have things that keep us in the same world. So I think that I could probably acknowledge as a part of that, my world will always be full with the people, and Jono's is always going to be filled with nature and gardening. And so we've got to make those two things connect, but we're already kind of practicing that. And I think Jono does like an amazing job of, when I have all my people over, he'll serve and cook and just like really get on board. And I have to acknowledge that, because then the uptake of me being like, yes, let's get in the garden is like still not quite to par as the level that he gives to me. So yeah, I acknowledge
Oh, you've never said that before, babe. I
know.
gotta put that one in the bank.
I could send you one every week to say, have your cup filled. Awesome, thank you.
Oh, good.
Jess, Jono, thank you. Genuinely, you guys are a gift, and there's a gift, and then there's a gift that's offered to be broken and poured out for the good of others. And you are that. So I want to thank you. May you go in peace. May you continue to curate and care for your connection so that your mokoas will one day be able to say those things. May you know the grace and patience that are required from when tough days will still come. And understand again that things don't have to be perfect to be wonderful. So thank you for sharing your story.